Tuesday, February 7th, 2017 meeting of the Iredell County Board of Commissioners. At this time, I would ask everyone to please bow your head in a few moments of silent prayer and reflection. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everyone here to the first meeting in February. It feels like May, but we won't send the weather back. We have adjustments to the agenda. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one adjustment to the agenda, and this is under item 10, appointments to boards and commissions. I'd like to add the Personnel Advisory Committee, one appointment. And for the Iredell Statesville Schools Facility Task Force, 7 appointments.
Is there a motion to approve the appointments as outlined by Mr. Smith?
Make a motion to accept.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those like sign, motion carries unanimously. At this time, we have an opportunity to recognize the Board of Health for Iredell County that has received a special recognition from the Association of Public Health Boards. And I would ask that the chairman and the vice chairman of that board, if they would please come up. And Mr. Tommy Smith and I will come out and
Oh, we got some new heads.
Vice Chairman Bowles serves as the commission's representative on the Iredell County Board of Health. And so I'm going to ask him to wax eloquent about the job that this is we have a number of boards and commissions that citizens volunteer to serve on to perform a number of essential functions for this county and provide support and expert advice to this board and our task forces. And this is a great example of a board comprised of citizens and professionals in their various fields that provides us the kind of information we need to be able to make informed and intelligent decisions in the main. So thank you for everyone that takes the time to volunteer and serve. At this time, we have an appointment before the board, Mr. John Ferguson, who will present a report and just an update on the Statesville Airport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for inviting me to come here and speak about my favorite subject, the airport. Just a little background on myself. I'm originally from Birmingham, Alabama. I graduated Auburn University in 1982 in aviation management. Been in airport management most of my career. My last recent job was Deputy Director at Florence, South Carolina, and ran the FBO and Deputy Director there. I've been the FBO Manager and Airport Manager at Anderson, South Carolina, Greenville, South Carolina, Lawrenceville, Georgia, Clarksville, Tennessee, so I've been around. Just thank you for having me, and glad to give you a little briefing on the airport. One of our favorite sayings in airports is the CEO of a company does not come to town on a bus. The first impression that a CEO will get when he's coming to a town to maybe look for a plant site or a manufacturing site is the airport. And what is he going to see? Is he going to see, is he going to see, let's go. Well, let's see if I can fix it. Sorry about that. Well, is he going to see a manicured shrubs and flowers, a nice asphalt pavement, or is he going to see grass in the cracks and a dilapidated building? Well, they get a very good impression of Statesville when they come to the airport. This is another saying that we like to say in aviation: a mile of highway will take you 1 mile, but a mile of road will take you around the world. Lowe's aircraft flies to Europe. They fly to Asia. You've got the NASCAR guys flying to California for races in New Hampshire and all over the country. This is just a little shot of the airport looking south. This was done several years ago. The reason that's because there's another hangar that's been built right there a few years ago. But this is a pretty good overview of the airport. Back in the early 2000s, the city decided to close this runway and turn it into a taxiway, which allowed all these hangars to be built. That's the Lowe's hangar there. They've got about $90 million worth of airplanes sitting in that hangar. A little general information about the airport: 7,006-foot runway. Just about any corporate aircraft can land there, and some of the smaller airline type airplanes, as one that's pictured here, it's a 727. That's a freighter that came in for 3 weeks, picking up freight, taking it to Detroit. They got behind on some transmission parts, and there's a transmission company in Newton that were supplying the transmission parts, and so we kept the auto line going, the assembly line going for about 3 weeks. The airport's controlled by Atlanta Air Traffic Control, not Charlotte, which the pilots really love. And we've got all kinds of services at the airport: aircraft instruction, flight instruction, sales, hangar rentals, aircraft maintenance, and just all kinds of services. And this was a study done by the North Carolina Airports Association. This is the economic impact of the Statesville Airport to the community: 290 jobs, $9.4 million payroll, and an economic impact of $40,680,000 to the community. This is a sort of a breakdown of the sheet of what the direct, indirect, and induced impacts are. But I wanted to show you this number right here: $821,961 of taxes levied on aircraft at the airport. That's the county's portion. $716,000 is the city's portion of taxes that are levied just on the airplanes, not the hangars, at the airport. A lot of activity, a lot of people think about, some people don't think about. Of course, we've got corporate aviation. We got the aircraft charters, which is Champion Air, which is owned by Teresa Earnhardt, and we've got a new one called Victory Air. I'll explain that in a minute. Some things that you don't see, sometimes you'll see a jet come in. There'll be a couple of doctors and a couple of nurses and some igloo coolers. They're coming to do organ procurement. These jets can fly 500 miles an hour, so they can be 1,000 miles in 2 hours, and that's very critical on when you're harvesting organs. We've had air freight, private and recreational planes, and we get the occasional military aircraft in every now and then. Some of the users on the airport, and you can see that it is NASCAR heavy. Outside the airport, you got GMS Racing and XPO Freight and Kozlowski's shop. On the airport, Champion Air, Dale Jr.'s aircraft and Martin Truex's airplanes. Greg Biffle, Matt Kinslis, Ryan Newman, Brad Kozlowski, Kurt Busch, the Penske hangar, and the general aviation hangar there with the Statesville Flying Service is where all the public flies into. Statesville Flying Service has been the fixed base operator, which is the company that services the airplanes, fuels them, hangars them. They've been on the airport since 1978, started by Phil Hazel. His son Thomas now runs it. And they provide all kind of services, all kind of fuels, maintenance, flight school, and that sort of thing. They do a very good job. Number of based aircraft over the past 15, 16 years, and we hit a topped out around 2009, 2010. We kind of topped out, and then the economy hit. People were selling off airplanes, and but we're kind of going back up again, kind of seeing the economy's finally turning around. But the slide that I love the most is this one here, the value of the airplanes on the field. Starting in 1999, only $19 million worth of airplanes. In 2010, we got up to $284 million worth of airplanes sitting on the field. Now, we lost a few because of the economy, and it did start to kind of go down. And we've kind of leveled off here the last 3 years. We've been fairly level. Now, this number right here, $155 million worth of airplanes, is not including about 5 of the airplanes that came on board just recently, and we'll talk about that. This is the best indicator that things are turning around. This is the fuel that's pumped on the airport. It's a combination of aviation gasoline and jet fuel. We kind of hovered around the $3.8, $3.9 million range, went to $1.6 million. 1.6 million gallons of fuel was sold last year. That about a 19% increase. Well, this is the kind of the thing that we're here to talk about. One of the things that I have to do when I've been tasked to market the airport is to increase the number of hangars and jet aircraft on the field. Well, right now I haven't had a whole lot to market, because if somebody were to call me and say, we'd like to have a space to build a hangar and bring 4 airplanes in, 4 jets in, I didn't have any place, really. We had a couple of places, but if we had put a hangar there, we would have locked ourselves in. We'd never be able to expand. So we looked at some of our adjacent land. This is that south runway, north-south runway that was closed. These are the NASCAR guys. Lowe's is right here. This is Robert Collier's property from Fleetwood all the way down to Old Mountain Road. We're looking at buying, we voted last night to purchase this 33 acres in here. This is going to allow us to have 10 to 12 hangars developed in this first 3 phases here. This hangar here is about to be constructed probably this summer. This concrete apron has already been constructed. We did this on the property that the city already owns, and we have to wait until we finish the closing on this property. But we could have 10 to 12 to 15,000 square foot hangars with multiple aircraft, multiple millions of dollars on each one. So this is then trying to show an easement or a road eventually all the way down to Old Mountain Road, so you can come all the way from Old Airport Road all the way to Old Mountain. The goal in the long-range future will be somehow to have a circular access around the airport. And this is what our first customer is Victory Air. They've been on the airport for about the last 14, 16 months. They have built this concrete apron here. They're in the process of building this 40 by 100, they call it operations building. It'll be attached to a 15,000 square foot hangar, which will probably be built this fall. They have 7 of these 50 passenger jets at $4 million each. So they've got $28 million worth of airplanes on the field. Oops, did it again. These are 3 of the 50 passenger jets that Victory Air has. They fly the pit crews and the support teams for the race car drivers. These are 3 of them. We now have 7 on the field. 50 passengers, 1,784 mile range, 518 miles per hour, and about $4 million each. So $28 million worth of airplanes. And they said if they could buy 3 or 4 more, they could put those 3, instantly put those to work. There's that much business in chartering for NASCAR. That's sort of a very quick overview of the airport. If you have any questions, I would like to recognize, I have our Airport Commission Chairman, Steve Johnson, and another commissioner from the airport, and City Councilman Jap Johnson here with me. Oh, here you go. I think I'd like to turn it over to Steve for just a moment to make a few comments, if you would.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I want to thank you for the continued confidence you had in me to allow me to remain on the Airport Commission. It is a passion of mine. John mentioned Anderson, South Carolina, where he was the airport manager. I flew my first solo in Anderson, South Carolina. Boy, 40-something years ago. But anyway, we think this is one of the greatest assets. We think, we topped out a few years ago. The economy went in the ditch. We rebounded. We think within the next few years, given the changes in the Charlotte area as it relates to Charlotte Douglas, and the advantages that we're going to have from a competitive standpoint, we think we can have you more tax base per acre at the Statesville Regional Airport than anywhere you have in the county. We think the potential is there. As John said, we're handicapped now because we're out of room, which brings me to the main reason that I came to show up to assist John this evening. We have talked about this numerous times, and I want to again apologize if I didn't make myself clear and specifically ask. Originally, we began to talk about $112,500 a year over a 2-year period. Because of the recent development of the 7 additional aircraft and the potential to locate other aircraft, we come to you tonight asking you to commit $250,000 a year for the next 2 years. The way that we structured the acquisition of this property, we think we can acquire the property and make considerable progress toward the development of 11.5 acres. We're going to do this in a manner that we're not going to keep coming back and asking you folks for money till we can bring you back evidence that we've done something with the trust that you put in us. We think it's a wonderful opportunity. I want to remind you that of the money that you contribute to the acquisition and development of this property, 90% of that money is reimbursable from the FAA and the North Carolina DOT. So the $500,000 you'll invest, you're going to have it tied up for a while. You will get back all of that but $50,000. Now, full disclosure, we fully intend to come back with you folks before too long and show you what we've done with this property. And you've gotten your money back, and we hope we can bring you back another business plan to where you want to reinvest that money. That is part of our long-term goal. But the continued advancement of the airport, this property acquisition and development is foundational. It's going to be the foundation for the next development and the one after that, hopefully resulting in a few years with a 9,000-foot-long regional transport airport. That'll be a huge economic engine of this county. So we'll entertain any questions that you have as far as the asking of the money and details on how we think we're going to be able to pay you back.
I got one. Mr. Johnson, how fast does this need to occur? How expedited do we need to be?
Well, since I'm the guy who never made the motion, it's of utmost importance to me that you do it tonight. The city went ahead and voted to acquire the property last night with my assurance that this board had talked about it on numerous occasions, and it had been communicated to the staff the consensus we were willing to participate. That's from the standpoint of the finances. The sooner it can happen, the better, because we're asking this gentleman right here to market the airport, but we don't have any room left with these 7 aircraft that showed up. We don't have anywhere to put them. One of these aircraft is going to be parked on a ramp because there's no hangar space for them. And it's difficult to get someone to invest $4 to $5 million in an aircraft, and it's going to sit out in the weather. So it needs to happen ASAP. I asked Mr. Smith, the county manager, I said, I'm not one of these guys that comes and wants to spend the money before we have it. But you think if the board does approve it tonight that we can instruct Parrish and Partners to go ahead and begin some design work, which I think they've already done some preliminary work, and try to get this thing going as quickly as possible. And the quicker that we can make this happen, the quicker we can bring you a return on your money. But I want to say this again. In over 20 years, and Mr. Jap Johnson's here, and I think he can speak to this. In over 20 years, the Airport Commission has never brought you anything where we outran your finances, and the county did not make serious money on it. And we'll make that pledge to you again. We won't come back till we show you evidence of return on your investment. And we think that $28 million that can be replicated over and over and over again. We just think the potential is there.
Just for clarity, Mr. Johnson, you've talked to us. It's been a great partnership with the city, and just for clarity from people that's contacted me, the city made a move on this knowing that we've been a good partner with the city and the county in the past, and it always has been a good investment. And with the change of the 7 airplanes coming in, the expedited amount of money moving to $250 instead of $112.5 for 2 years is for economic growth, and it would have a great impact on our tax bases and, to help the growth of the airport. So I've had people ask that question, but just to clarify that was our only question. We appreciate what you do, John. You've got the maintenance at the airport called up, still ongoing, but Mr. Johnson informed us of some needs that are still there, but it's always going to be a moving target. But we appreciate what you do. But, the city made a move last night in an attempt to go ahead and move forward with this because it is such a good investment, and they know we've always been a good partner, or the county has, and hopefully we can continue that relationship.
Well, thanks, sir. I want to say again that I apologize for not sewing this up before I left. I think it was a consensus of the board that we were going to proceed, and then some circumstances did change. But I expressed to the city council, Mr. Johnson, yesterday before they voted that the consensus of your board was the same. I hope you'll ratify that tonight, and again with positive assurance that we're going to make this a money maker for you over time, and you will get 90% of your money back. Not to say that if we make you a profit, we won't come back and ask you to reinvest it again.
Chairman Johnson and Mr. Ferguson, could you, for the benefit of the general public, I think, just describe the different sources of revenue that are available and typically used for the airport between the FAA and Department of Transportation and city and the county, and then if you would address what limitations are then placed on the various participants in terms of their ability to sort of ad valorem taxes on the actual land itself and what is subject to ad valorem taxes. And also, if you could just talk about what's your time frame on the build out for this, and how are the construction of the hangars and the aprons and the taxiways and all of that, how is that financed and recouped?
Well, let me first start off with the revenue generated on the airport. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up. The revenue the airport generates, or the city generates, is from land rentals, mostly, and fuel flowage fees. We get 20 cents per gallon. It's a sliding scale on the NASCAR guys, and 3 cents a gallon from Statesville Flying Service. So that 1.6 million gallons, we get revenue off of that. Got about a $500,000 operating budget on the airport, and we pretty much pay our bills. We don't have to tap into the general fund very much. Then moving from there, there is the Vision 100 grants, which we get every single year, the $150,000 that we get from the FAA every year. And that's one of the things I was going to talk about I had left out. Not only just buying the land, but now we want to try to provide some pad-ready sites. Now, we're not physically going to build hangars. The city doesn't want to be landlords. We don't want to build hangars, but we do want to provide a pad-ready site. So we've asked Parrish & Partners, our consultant, to take the 2016 Vision 100 grant that we get, $150,000, and there's a little bit left over from 2015. We combine that, and they're going to get a plan, a design for the first 11 acres. And that's going to be paid for by the Vision 100 grant. That'll get us to a point where we could be bid ready, and then we're going to go to the state aviation, DOT Aviation, and we're going to ask them for about $2.5 million for the actual construction. 90% grant. All that would be grant funded. And then relocating utilities, putting the taxi lanes down for the hangars, but not building the hangars themselves. We'll let the individuals build their own hangars. So there's several pots in the FAA. There's the Vision 100 grants. There's FAA grants that are tied to different mechanisms. There's discretionary funds that come out from the southern region of the FAA. And then also we've been kind of working a little bit with the CARPO and the STI funds, of trying to maybe tap into some of that for some of our big projects that are kind of over and above like runway extensions and road relocations and things like that. So there's several pots of federal and state dollars. Then there's state aviation funds also, in addition to the federal aviation funds. So the state DOT has funds for projects. So, and all of it's 90% participation.
But to be clear, as far as once the land is purchased and it's reimbursed through the FAA, that is not on the county's ad valorem tax rolls. So
it'll be owned by the city.
We do not get tax revenue, property taxes from the real property. But we do get ad valorem taxes for the aircraft that are permanently stationed there.
And you would get ad valorem taxes on the hangars that they build.
All right. And in terms of the phase one that you're contemplating here and that we're going to be partnering with the city on, how quickly will it be before you get the FAA 90% match in hand?
For the land acquisition or for the grading?
For the land acquisition.
Land acquisition could possibly be anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 years. We'll certainly keep bugging them all the time. You know, we want the reimbursement as quickly as possible. And it really helps when they start looking at projects across the state. It really does help to go to them and say, look, we've funded this up front. We are behind this project. We're not having this project sitting on a shelf gathering dust, waiting on the grant. We've gone ahead and purchased the land, and we are dedicated to this project, and we would like for them to reimburse us for it. And that really kind of metaphorically puts us at the top of the list sometimes when they see that we've put our money where our mouth is. So I don't think it'll be an extremely long period of time, but I don't see it in the next 6 months unless, manna from heaven comes down.
Now the $2.5 million actual grant through the state, I think you mentioned, for the concrete runways, or not runways, taxiways and aprons and all that, and the pads. The timeline for that, if you were to lay that out, what would that look like as far as when you're, and would you get that 2.5? Is that a loan or?
No, it'd be a grant,
grant.
Another grant. Parish and Partners has told me that it'd take about 240 days, and we just gave them the go-ahead a couple of weeks ago to start the design. So they'll have us a design in about 240 days. So toward the late fall, we'll have the design done, and then we can start bugging the NCDOT Aviation for the construction funds.
Okay, and you would expect that to be 100% grant?
90%.
90%.
90%.
Okay. Well, and with our basically over 2 years, 250 each year, 500,000 essentially tied up for 1 to 4 years, I'm assuming that the city of Statesville is able to work the $2.5 million piece themselves.
You know, we could try that. I mean, we'll cross that bridge, I guess, when we come to it. But sometimes land acquisition is a lower priority than construction. So we could get the construction money before we get the land acquisition money. But any monies that we do get for the land acquisition, we get reimbursed 90%. Of course, we cut you a check back, for your portion, and give it back to you.
Well, what I'm saying is, and I don't speak for everybody here, but for myself, this is a 2-year process here, and it is, I think, the consensus of everyone on this board that this is the way we want to go to support the expansion process. But we do have a limited economic development budget. We are not the major players in economic development. Those are the municipalities who have the utility services and all of that, and a very more focused economic development budget. We are cheerleaders, and we try to help people get across the line. And I think that this is a wise investment, but it does sort of put us to the point where we're a little bit out of Schlitz after this. And so as you are looking for the pad preparation and pouring and all that, we've already blown through the budget for 2 years. So I'm just telegraphing that this is about it.
Okay.
At least for my foxhole. But it is nonetheless necessary to, I think, get a jump start on this and move forward and demonstrate the strong level of support that we and the rest of the county view Statesville Airport as a economic asset and driver for the entire county. So
I'll pass that along.
One thing I was going to say that I was impressed with looking at the information provided, that one thing that I think is important to point out, that one corporate jet on average turns in a tax value equal to 100 homes in Iredell County. So I think that's important to keep in mind also, the return on the tax base. One corporate jet on average brings in enough tax base to equal 100 homes. So I think that's a good factor to remember.
Average cost of a car and divide that, you can see it's probably over 10,000 cars.
Right.
The other thing I'd like to point out, Mr. Halpin and Mr. Chairman, to your two specific questions, is the $2.5 million. This can be done incrementally. We don't have to do it. We can develop a pad-ready site for one potential tenant and go ahead and position that tenant, begin to collect that, and it'd still be reimbursable, provided it's in the ALP and the North Carolina DOT's approved it. So we don't have to spend all that at one time.
well, clearly the faster the money gets turned around in terms of the grant from the FAA, that certainly frees up everyone to be more flexible, as you said, moving forward and rolling that into additional investments as is appropriate. But if it takes 4 years, then that is going to have a significant impact because even though that's dollars that we will get back, it's not dollars that we have access to. And we have the whole county in terms of economic development to try to find places where we can have maximum effect. But
I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, I think the airport is a place where we can have maximum effect, and so we have $500,000 we've set aside for our economic development, and as far as I know, we've really not touched it, have we? Not this year. So we do have the $250. We've got that money. I think we probably want to make. Do we want to do a closed session motion, or do we want to do something in new business motion?
I think probably we're going to have a closed session for economic development. We can just run through the budget amendment because that's what it would require.
Yeah.
And get the right language and then come out and go ahead and vote.
One quick question before you go, Mr. Ferguson. What's your relationship with your corporate clients there? Do you do a ground lease to them? They build their building on your pad, and if anything ever happens, that remains Statesville Regional Airport's piece of property, correct?
That's correct. And if they were to give up their lease and they assign it to somebody else, but at the end of 25 years, that building becomes the property of the city.
Okay.
And we turn around and lease it back to them as a building then. And I would like to say one more thing before closing. If anybody would like to see the airport, please give me a call. I'll be more than happy to give you a tour, show you some of the great things out there that's going on, and show you these areas that we're talking about. Be glad to show you around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson. And Chairman Johnson, appreciate your taking the time to come and share with us. And if you all would both just stand by for our closed session on economic development, we'll just tie up the package and
Yes, sir.
make sure we have
We'll
it
be
all.
here at your pleasure, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And Mr. Johnson, thank you for being here. It's always good to see representatives from the City Council. Let me circle back to item 5.2. There's a resolution that we are considering for requesting our legislative team to authorize and fund a 6th district court judge for Iredell County based on the fact that our population has increased to the point where our judicial system needs to be able to expand its capacity, and that capacity is usually driven by how many judges you have, the ability to sit on the bench. For people's awareness, the judicial district that Iredell County is in used to be called the 22nd District and consisted of 4 counties, Alexander, Iredell, Davie, and Davidson. That about 10 years ago, that division was split, that district, and Iredell and Alexander became their own subset. It's 22A and then 22B for Davie and Davidson. But they had 11 judges, and trying to separate and apportion them because Davidson County had greater population than Iredell County, and the other 2 counties were roughly equal. Davidson County got 6 judges. We received 5. Today, Iredell County, I believe, as late as 2014, overtook Davidson County in terms of population, and we are working with the clerk of court to get some additional data concerning the per capita number of cases, the per capita, just a variety of data points that can demonstrate that we are in need of that 6th judgeship. And it's more or less authorized, but it's not been funded, and we're going to be requesting that it be funded so that we can increase the throughput of our judicial system, which would coincide at roughly the same time that we are nearing completion on the expansion of the Iredell County Jail. I would note that in the next 5, or for the last 5 years, Iredell County has grown at a rate in excess of 6%, which is close to double or triple what many of the counties surrounding us have grown. And in the next 5 years, we're anticipating a growth rate of around 12%. So that puts demands on all the services that are provided by the county and the municipalities. So we will continue to ride that horse and not get thrown off and keep a sharp eye on the bottom line. So this resolution, I believe that we had agreed that once we had the data that we would circulate the resolution, and I think a motion would probably be in order to authorize after the circulation and feedback to Mr. Smith that I be able to go ahead and sign that and send it on to our legislative team and the respective Alexander County commissioners, as well as all of the executive committees of the Republican and Democrat parties.
Motion to approve it, Chairman.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to administrative matters that have been discussed at our pre-agenda meeting and are on our consent agenda. And Mr. Smith, if you'll please summarize those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is a request from the Parks and Recreation Department for approval of an interlocal agreement for the relocation of the Ropes Challenge course to the South Iredell High School property and approval of budget amendment number 17.2. Item 2 is a request from the Public Library to apply for an LSTA grant in the amount of $100,000 to purchase an RFID self-checkout system. Item 3 is a request from the Public Library for approval to apply for discounted internet access under the Federal Communications Commission's E-rate program, and this would save about $13,000. Item 4 is a request from the Finance Department for approval of budget amendment number 18 to accept and appropriate an additional $30,000 in JCPC Level 2 funding to Barium Springs Task Program. Item 5, a request from the Tax Administration to accept the report of unpaid tax liens and set the advertising date for March 15th. Item 6, a request from Tax Administration for approval of budget amendment number 19 to appropriate fund balance assigned for planometrics, improved image resolution, and change finder change detection, and approve amendment to the agreement with Pictometry. Item 7, a request from Fire Services and Emergency Management on behalf of Trinity Volunteer Fire Department to appoint trustees to the Fire Relief Fund as required by the NC Office of State Fire Marshal. Item 8 is a request from the Fire Services and Emergency Management for final approval of transfers to the Sheffield-Callahan VFD Fire Insurance District. Item 9, request from Finance Department for award of a 3-year contract to Farmers Mulch and Rock to perform yard waste grinding services at solid waste. Item 10, a request from the Finance Department for approval of a sole source award to purchase additional Northwoods modules and related services for the imaging project at Department of Social Services. Item 12, a request from ICATS for approval to add 1 administrative position to help with workload due to North Carolina Medicaid reform and NC Tracks. Item 13 is a request from Iredell Statesville Schools for adoption of a resolution supporting requested legislation of the North Carolina General Assembly. And a little more detail on that, this is broken into 3 joint resolutions, the joint resolutions being with Mooresville Graded School District and Iredell Statesville Schools. The first one being a resolution for accountability for all schools or for public schools. And this has to do with the A through F performance grade system. The second resolution is for control and flexibility of the public school calendar. And the third resolution is for flexibility concerning class size. And in that third resolution, there was a request to take out the first paragraph beginning with whereas. And so those 3 resolutions were requested for approval. And item 15, request from the clerk to the board for approval of minutes from the meeting on January 17th, 2017. 2 items were left off just for note, item 11 and item 14, and if you approve the consent agenda, I can go through those, or you can do that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Haupt. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, if you'll discuss the two items that are going to roll over.
Okay. Item number 11 is a request from the Planning Division for approval of a text amendment to the Land Development Code. This has to do with several items, namely quarries and mining operations and the like. The board had received a note or a letter from Elmwood Strong, who is the organization that prompted this amendment, asking for 2 weeks, a 2-week delay to follow up on some surveys that had been submitted to surrounding areas and areas surrounding other quarries, from my understanding. We received those today, and therefore this was taken off of the consent agenda with the idea of potentially moving this back to our next meeting on the 21st, and that would require a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll submit a motion that we defer that to the 21st meeting. Table it.
Okay, motion by Commissioner McNeely. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously.
And the last item was 14, and this was a request by administration. The clerk to the board has been working with Commissioner Haupt and Commissioner McNeely on the updated rules of procedure. There was a request at the pre-agenda meeting just to get some more research on a couple of items that were discussed, and we will do that over the next couple of weeks, and the board can also vote on this to delay it as well.
Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we would table this matter until the meeting of February 22nd, 21st.
Okay, motion by Vice Chairman Bowles. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Before we move on from the administrative matters that were worked on the consent agenda, I would like to highlight just a couple of those for a minute. The first one was the agreement that has an interlocal agreement between the Iredell County School Board and the county relative to a collaborative use of school property for recreation purposes. This is the first time this has been done, and it is as a model, I think, for future cooperation to be able to leverage money that the county has already spent, that citizens have already paid to be able to purchase land for schools. But in some areas of the county, they're not able to utilize the acreage because of watershed regulations. In some instances, in a WS4 low-density option, you can only use 25% of the land for non-permeable purposes, and it could go up to 50%. So, in essence, the schools have had to buy more land than they could possibly use simply to meet a watershed regulation. And what this collaborative effort demonstrates is really a win-win proposition, because we're able to utilize some of that unused land for recreational fields, or in this case, the ropes course, which is in southern Iredell County, which is going to be moved to a very appropriate location, heavily wooded, ravines. You couldn't use it for anything else. But the ropes course that is currently located in, what is it, near exit
36, close to
36, 38, has just been surrounded by development. It used to be in the middle of nowhere, in the sense that it was just, you wouldn't know it was there based on all the trees, and now all the trees are gone, and it's become a piece of property that actually is fairly valuable commercial property. But we did not want to lose the unique character of that ropes course and the ability of our schools and our businesses and individuals to be able to use that for leadership development. And the ropes course will be located on the campus of property that is owned by the county, leased by the Iredell-Statesville Schools for South Iredell High School. And so going forward, we're just going to be able to leverage this so that we can have decent recreation facilities co-located with schools and not have to invest money in additional purchases of land, but can instead use that money to develop the actual fields and other facilities. And I want to express my appreciation to our Education Task Force with Commissioner Marvin Norman and Gene Haupt for their work with the school board. And I want to especially express our appreciation to the Iredell-Statesville School Board for taking a look at this and their staff and working through, nugging through the details and working out, not letting details get in the way of a really significant initiative. So thank you. You give them a shout out, and we'll see where this takes us down the road. And finally, on the three resolutions that the board has adopted, one relates to the ability of our school system to align itself with the school calendar for Mitchell College. As many of you may recall, the state mandated moving the school calendar back to late in August to the point where schools aren't able to really finish their first semester and exams until mid-January after school, the Christmas break, and then are graduating then in mid-June. This was done statewide, basically to accommodate those areas of the state that rely on tourism. And whether you're in the beaches or in the mountains, being able to have access to young people who are working various concessions and all, that it was helpful to them monetarily and economically to be able to retain that. But as a result, other localities that did not have tourism-dependent economies that instead perhaps were focused as we are and on an industrial base and commercial base, where our community college is the secret weapon that helps us be able to provide the human capital to be able to attract businesses and to retain businesses and to improve our standard of living for our high school graduates. We weren't able to align those two calendars, and we have asked that, and Senator Curtis has agreed to introduce legislation that would align our local school systems with the community college and give us that flexibility. Because sometimes we have some families have children that are in both the schools and Mitchell College, and now because Mitchell starts in mid-August, early August, their ability to take vacations is limited. So that is basically a bill that is going to ask for an exception to the rule and allow us to have a local approach to our calendar and flexibility. The other piece has to do with the K through 3 lowering of students in those grades to 18. That's I think everyone can agree that that's a noble goal, and the fewer children that, particularly young children, that teachers have to supervise and teach is better, a lower student-to-teacher ratio. However, a mandate that doesn't come with funds means that we have to take that out of Hyde, and the impacts would have been significant to our schools and is going to be significant to our schools unless the legislature gives us some relief from that. So we've asked for that. Finally, the A through F grading system, which has been based 80% on performance and 20% on growth, results in an inequitable and incorrect depiction of the success or lack of success of a school. And many schools have a large disadvantaged population that starts at a lower point in terms of proficiency, and our teachers do an amazing job of moving them up the glide slope to be able to make significant academic progress. But quite naturally, if they're starting at a 1, and you have other folks coming into school that are starting at a 3, and they're also growing, then there's going to be a disparity there. And so we want to ask the legislature to revise that A through F grading schedule to give greater weight to growth, not just performance, and recognize that at the end of the day, when they get out of high school, everyone should be in that band of excellence and be able to get that high school diploma that has meaning. But in those early years, you're just getting them started. And so it's painting an unnecessarily and incorrect depiction of many of our schools as not making the grade when, in fact, they're making tremendous strides with these children. So those are the 3 resolutions that we'll be forwarding to our legislators, and hoping that they will get favorable consideration. And, of course, everyone out there as citizens can contact our legislators and also request them and their compatriots to support these initiatives. Okay, at this point, everybody else want to say anything?
Oh, we're good.
You're going to beat me if I say anything more.
We're good.
Okay. We'll move on to the item 9, announcement of vacancies occurring on boards and commissions. There are 6 announcements on the Board of Equalization and Review, and I would like to mention that 2 members, Ken Pritchard, who is a former chairman, and Hal Jolly, a former vice chairman, have finished 6 terms on that board. By law, they cannot be reappointed for at least another year, but we appreciate greatly their service. Their expertise and their knowledge will be sorely missed, but we always know that they're there as resources for the board members that continue to drive on. So we will, and certainly anyone that has an interest in serving on that board can fill out an application, which is on the county's website, and submit that. We will actually consider those and make appointments at the next board meeting in 2 weeks. What date is that? 21st of February. Now we move on to appointments to boards and commissions. And we have appointments to the Personnel Advisory Committee, 1 appointment. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would make the motion that we would appoint Mr. Robert Bennett for another term on the Personnel Advisory Committee.
Motion by Vice Chairman Bowles. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We also have 7 appointments to the newly reconstituted Iredell Statesville Schools Facilities Task Force. There will be 7 appointments. We do have several potential members that have indicated an interest in serving, but have not yet submitted their applications. And so, in the interest of giving them that opportunity, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we table that until our February 21st meeting.
Motion by Commissioner Norman. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, is there any unfinished business to come before the board? Hearing none. This is not a public comment period until next meeting. Is there any new business to come before the board? Hearing none. Mr. Smith, if you will render the county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. Wanted to let you know that the board endorsed 3 Golden Leaf. They weren't full applications. This has been a while back, but letters of interest, basically. 3 projects were the Mooresville South Iredell EDC extension or Business Park Road extension, the Iredell Statesville Schools Early College program at North Iredell, and the Fort Dobbs project for expansion. The first 2, the 900-foot road addition and the Iredell Statesville Schools Early College, have both been invited to put in a full application, which is a very good sign. That's basically step 2 of this process. So the first one is a request for $600,000 of an overall $720,000 project. And the second, the school system, was a $460,000 request of a $1.5 million project. So very promising. I don't know how many, Ben, do you know how many overall? We don't really know how many others have been put in, but 2 out of 3 isn't bad just to get to this level. I will say that I don't know this for a fact, but I've been told that Representative Fraley has put in a good word in the right areas to help with these projects, and probably all 3, I would assume, but that has helped. And if that is indeed the fact, if I see him, I'll personally thank him because these are beneficial. March 10th, the applications are due for this part of the process. March through April, we'll get visits from the Golden Leaf representatives will visit, and then June 1st, the board will vote on the proposals. Dr. Brian Beaver, he is our medical director for EMS. You all met him probably 2 months ago, I think. He is on staff, been working with EMS, had their first, I believe it was their first peer review this week. He has been taken out to the hospitals and met some of the staff at the hospitals that we deal with through EMS. And Blair Ritchie has a plan that she's trying to schedule now, face-to-face individual meetings with the volunteer fire departments and the rescue squads to get Dr. Beaver out and get him hearing any issues or take questions or just give input to the folks out in the service. And then finally, just a quick update on the jail and public safety complex. 95% of the pre-construction work for the jail is done. That's all the monument moving, the flagpole, the interior work. The only thing that we are waiting on now is the wall, the main wall from the entrance coming in that's going to be moved at the clerk of court's office. And that's going to start on the 18th. Construction trailers are in. Utilities, if they haven't been moved already, are in the process of being moved. We have had, Bordeaux Construction has had 2 minority and local vendor outreach meetings, which is something that we required of them in their contract. Construction drawings will be completed mid-March. We'll submit those to the local and the state review offices. Shouldn't take too long. Bids should be in late April. That's key. That's a key point for us. Once we get those bids in, we will be able to establish our guaranteed maximum price, and that's going to be our fine-tuned budget number that we've been waiting for about a year now. So, we have a ballpark, but that's going to be when we know for sure where we're at. That will come back to the board sometime, I will say in May, probably late May. Hopefully that is something that you all will approve. We can insert that in the budget and begin the project. So things are moving well, but it looks like an early summer, late spring, early summer time frame for beginning, and going to have a 20-month clock, basically, on the project from there, because we've got some provisions built into the contract that we will get it done in 20 months. So February 2019 is hopefully when we'll be completed. Public safety complex, basically that is 2 months behind on the jail project. But the overall construction time frame is 14 months instead of 20 months, so it'll actually finish quicker. We will also be coming to you with a GMP, guaranteed maximum price, for your approval there too. So we're very much looking forward to getting those and being able to plan for those to move forward. So glad to take any questions that you have.
Is there anything you need from us on the 3 things that we're down to 2 in the second phase, other than call Mr. Fraley?
Calls of support are probably good. I think the fact that they've gotten them in, I'll reach out to Town of Mooresville and Iredell Statesville Schools, because they're the ones doing the applications. Basically, Ben started the process and it was handed off to each individual applicant. But I'll see if there's anything that you all can do or our legislators can do as well. But thank you for asking.
And although Fort Dobbs, I guess, didn't make the final cut, or at least not this next step that we've been told, I would point out that Fort Dobbs is rising. That if you go out on Fort Dobbs Road, you can see that Geo Wilson has been working to put in the foundation and the chimney and whatever other code required construction that didn't exist back in 1754. They are working diligently on. So I think once people start seeing that there's actually something physical out there, and that there will be a lot of excitement generated, not just here locally, but throughout the state on this very unique reconstruction of a replica of the original Fort Dobbs. Okay, at this time, we'll entertain a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of attorney-client discussions pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3, as well as economic development pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.1 subsection A4, and property acquisition pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11 subsection A5.
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We're in recess.
Coming out of executive, going back in.
Right. I think this is the first.
I think it is. I don't remember doing this. We're suspending the rules. I think we should.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and resume with our open session in order to clear the decks so that those that have been so helpful in sharing their information and all can not be held hostage while we go through another hour's worth of closed sessions. So we have discussed fully the economic development pursuant to economic development General Statute 143-318 11A4, the support to the Statesville Airport in terms of as was outlined earlier. And at this point, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve and continue our partnership with the City of Statesville and the airport, and we approve a total of $250,000 for this year, and that we make a pledge that we intend on allocating an additional $250,000 in next year's budget process.
Motion by Commissioner Haupt. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to state that we appreciate Statesville City Council taking a step out in faith yesterday and go ahead and putting the money out there, and we're going to come in and help.
Indeed. Anything else? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. At this time, we will recess to continue discussions.
Need to go back into closed session.
And I'm not going to repeat all the general statute references. They're already in the record.